Professor Jha has joined. So, please come. So, am I audible to you? Hello? Students, am I audible to you? Can you listen to me, sir?
Yes, I think so. Just please wait for a moment. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir. We can hear you very well.
Yeah, loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, so, dear colleagues, first, on behalf of this department, I welcome today's speaker in this Professor A.I.H.C. Chattopadhyaya Memorial Lecture Series, which we have been organizing since last year. Today is the 9th lecture in this series, and which will be delivered by Professor Visva-Bharati. I think you all are aware of his name because of your syllabus of early medieval India. I welcome the other colleagues who have joined online, particularly Dr. Claudine Picron. I think she has joined almost all the lectures delivered in this series. I welcome my senior colleague, Dr. Professor A.I.H.C, sir. And let me introduce my colleagues with you, sir. I think Professor A.I.H.C, you are aware about his whereabouts. Also, I have another colleague, sir, Dr. Sarita Khetri, Dr. K.N. Rajan, Dr. Lavin Simte. Here is a young guy who has joined recently. It's Dr. Suken Sa. Behind Dr. Sarita Khetri, one person is hiding, Dr. Suchira Rai Chaudhary, and Sabroti Pramani Nayak, and Dr. Sujata Rakshit. So we have 9 people right now in the department. 2 posts are vacant, and you will be happy to know, sir, that in our department we have specialized people in every aspect of ancient Indian history, culture, and archaeology. So about it's I think customary to introduce the speaker in front of the audience. Let me introduce Professor Jha. Professor Jha is a professor in Delhi University, Atmaram College. For us, he is an elder brother, senior person, a source of inspiration for researchers like us, those who dwell within early medieval history. It was a great source of inspiration for at least me during my research days, and I'm continuing with that. Professor Jha has done his master's from JNU, MPhil, and PhD from Delhi University. He is currently working professor, Department of History, A.R.S.D. College, University of Delhi, basically a specialist in early Indian history. He sometimes ventured beyond it too. Most recently, he has written rather a lengthy foreword and even lengthier afterword to a reissue of D.N. Jha's book, Revenue System in Post-Maurya and Gupta Times, which is published by Manohar. His important works, a Marxist medievalist in India's Stone Age, in Prabhat Patnaik edited Exercises in History, Essays on Some Ideas of Irfan Habib, which is published by Tulika. Rethinking Periodization and Some Related Issues in Indian History, Untouchability, Gita, and the Pursuit of Truth. Some important book reviews also, which I think you should know about his work on ideas and monuments in the age of the Mauryas, with special reference to Pali and Ardha-Magadhi sources by S.N. Dubey. He has a review which is published in an historical review. From another work is from ancient to early medieval India, some issues in social history, Professor Yogendra Mishra Memorial Lecture Series. The book review on political philosophy of Gramsci and B.R. Ambedkar. Itineraries of Dalit and Subaltern, edited by Cosimo Zene in Bulletin of School of Oriental and African Studies, 2014. Another important one, feudal debate, lecture delivered at UGC Human Resource Development Center. writing early Indian economic history from Buddhist sources, making of. Recently, he delivered a lecture, which is, of course, enlightening for all of us. Writing early Indian economic history from the book. No, this is sorry. Making of a historian, Professor Ram Sharan Sharma, and early Indian history. Lecture delivered at UGC Human Resource Development Center, Academic Staff College, New Delhi. Then communal entities in the historiography of early India, a preliminary note. And recovering the tension between violence and non-violence in ancient India's political history and thought. Okay, this is a brief introduction of Professor Jha. Professor Jha has reviewed so many books. He has written written articles. Books are also there. So, without taking much of your time, as you all are aware about the today's topic, origin of Rajput. From childhood days, we are aware about the controversies regarding this origin theory, and the path-breaking job or work was done by Professor B.D. Chattopadhyaya. So, Professor Jha, when we requested him, he was kind enough to accept our invitation, and that time he said, I will speak on this only. So it will be closer to Professor B.D. Chattopadhyaya's ideas, and he will be talking more about what Professor B.D. Chattopadhyaya has written. So thank you very much, all of you, for attending, and thank you all the people who have joined online. On behalf of my department, I am welcoming all of you, and I think now I should hand over the stage to Professor Jha for his lecture. So, sir, welcome, sir.
Ich werde rausgehen. Das ist.
Hello, thank you, Anilji.
Sir.
So can we start now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, please.
All right. I feel doubly grateful to Professor Anil Kumar, first for conceiving and organizing this series of lectures in memory of our revered teacher, Professor B.D. Chattopadhyaya, and also for inviting me to be a part of it. Thank you, Anilji. Talking of Professor Chattopadhyaya, I think I can take legitimate pride in following and engaging materially and closely with the works of Professor Chattopadhyaya as much as, if not more than, anyone else. The longest of my pre-PhD papers, it sought first to place his rural settlements, that small but very provocative and highly original book of Professor Chattopadhyaya. So I was doing my PhD and I could not have proceeded without taking into full account and forming my opinion of this latest and the most important of the contributions to early medieval India. So that was what my, as I said, longest pre-PhD article was about, settlement, society, and polity in early medieval North India. So by that time, he had also written the introduction to his book, The Making of Early Medieval India. So I took the two things, the small book and the article, as marking a most important step, next step of the pioneering works of Kosambi and Sharma. So it's impossible to understand the writings of Professor Chattopadhyaya without first placing them in the historiographical context. I mean, he was as engaged as anybody else. And then to explore ways. So what I tried to do in that piece of mine was first to read Professor Chattopadhyaya between the lines, word by word, and then try to assess their historical significance by placing them in their historiographical context, and then trying to carry the story further forward. I mean, how can we take the next step after Chattopadhyaya? So that's what I try to do there. In my other pieces too, the one on feudal elements in Chalukya polity. So I tried to examine the Chattopadhyaya's juxtaposition, I mean, his contrasting of feudal decentralization to political integration. So if there is no decentralization, according to Chattopadhyaya, there can be no feudalism. So I try to do that there. In my other essays on economy, on historiography, so I have written at length about, many other people have done so, but I too have had my share in the ongoing debate about the work of Chattopadhyaya on urbanization, on irrigation in early medieval North India. So that was, I mean, that remains one of the best pieces that he ever wrote. But once again, unless one has read up and one keeps in mind the 1969 presidential address, medieval India presidential address to Indian History Congress of Irfan Habib on technology, it's impossible to fully appreciate the depth of Chattopadhyaya's contribution. So that has been my method, which I think is a must. That is of a critical juxtaposition of his works to those of his predecessors and contemporaries. So this need for a critical juxtaposition is a must on all counts. How can, after all, we appreciate the true significance of his works without knowing with equal precision the contribution of others? For instance, Chattopadhyaya had this marvelous thesis of the third urbanization in early medieval India. But that's only a different, I mean, when Chattopadhyaya wrote that, he wasn't able to bring in a similar thesis by A.I.H.C. in the last chapter of his Indian feudalism, of urban revival. So when we talk about the third urbanization and try to see its merits, to learn from it, we have to critically juxtapose it, to compare and contrast it with what had gone before, what A.I.H.C. or Habib and others they had been saying about this urban revival. So when we remember Professor Chattopadhyaya, when I come here to speak in his memory, so this is the tribute, I mean, which I would like to pay to him by saying him among the most distinguished practitioners of what I call here the new historiography, pioneered by Kosambi and Sharma. Very late, when Professor S. Setar was chairperson of Indian Council of Historical Research, he dug out an old, extremely important work which Chattopadhyaya did under the general editorship of Nihar Ranjan Ray and got it published. So it's a source book of ancient Indian civilization, which was then updated through a very big, substantial appendix by Professor Ranbir Chakravarti. So that was the piece which Chattopadhyaya had written up, say in early 1970s, before 1975. So he submitted the manuscript, and the ICHR authorities thought it better to leave it to what angels would call the gnawing criticism of mice, but then which was retrieved and published. For us, that book is of supreme importance in underlining the point, which is to be the starting point of my today's lecture, which is that Chattopadhyaya cannot be understood except as a part of this new historiography pioneered by D.D. Kosambi and R.S. Sharma. I have written about it in detail in an unpublished paper of mine, but there Chattopadhyaya comes out there are two aspects. Historiographically, what he writes as detailed introductions to several chapters, sections, and subsections of that source book of ancient Indian history. It consists majorly of extracts from archaeological and from literary sources. They all are prefaced by detailed introductions by Chattopadhyaya in early 1970s. You will find it difficult to believe that those introductions on, say, on early medieval Indian history were not written by R.S. Sharma himself. Complete agreement about the rise of landed intermediaries, about proliferation of castes, about urban decline, about everything, except in one vital respect. Chattopadhyaya would not deploy the term feudalism to describe those processes and institutions of early medieval Indian history. In all other respects, he found himself in complete agreement. That was his starting point, his point of departure. So from a position of subscribing almost totally to the thesis of R.S. Sharma especially, he sets out on a career of fruitful, productive, consistent critiques of Sharma through his writing career. But from the beginning, he was having doubts about, he would not chary of using the word feudal, which is all right, because even as Sharma was propounding his thesis in Kolkata, in Calcutta in 1964-65, so at the same time, he was being questioned by D.C. Sarkar. He said that all this is fine, but this is no feudalism. So it's on this note that I should like to begin my lecture on the origin of Rajputs. We know that in 1976, in the Indian Historical Review, Chattopadhyaya published another seminal essay. It is called On the Origin of Rajputs, with a very significant subtitle. It's called, I will write it out in the chat box. So please look up your chat boxes. For the details. So where is the chat box? Right. It's called Origin of the Rajputs, the political, economic, and social processes in early medieval Rajasthan. So this topic, Origin of Rajputs, ever since the inception of Indian historiography, historians have been talking about it. It's an old perennial of Indian historiography, but its scope was very limited. It was all about whether the Rajputs of Western India, of Rajputana, of Gujarat, of other places, they were of foreign stock, or they were true Aryans of ancient Kshatriya stock. It was all about that. And historiography remained confined within those parameters. You talk about the origin of Rajputs, and you talk in terms of their foreign or solar or lunar, whatever origins. No sociological analysis, no historical sociology of the origin of Rajputs. Even that old, at that time, that young communist and a budding, very original historian from Bengal, Professor Nihar Ranjan Ray. So he was a member initially of the Communist Party of India, as we all know. But even when he was writing about origin of Rajputs, he wrote a small but important article in the annals of Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. So he remained confined within those parameters. So when Chattopadhyaya in early 70s talks about origin of Rajputs in terms of political, economic, and social processes, he is placing himself very firmly within the new historiographical tradition. The very conception of this article is inconceivable without Kosambi's introduction. That provides the real context of this work. But the immediate inspiration, he made it very explicit, but the immediate inspiration was A.I.H.C. Sharma's. So at the beginning of this article, Chattopadhyaya rightly pointed out that the issue had hardly till then been examined as a process, origin of Rajputs as a process, with reference, I quote, to the factors which are known to have been in operation in early medieval India. What are those factors? For a brief statement of those factors, he refers us to R.S. Sharma's first Chanana Memorial Lecture, Social Changes in Early Medieval India. That is the direct inspiration. So if you read up Sharma's Social Changes in Early Medieval India, you will find a continuum, a continuation in Chattopadhyaya's original seminal work on the origin of Rajputs. It's completely detached from the earlier narratives on the origin of Rajputs. Except, again, as I said, this model of feudalism, it was being questioned on all accounts. So, as we all know, in his presidential address to History Congress, Chattopadhyaya, he found it very curious that the most vocal critic of Indian feudalism thesis, D.C. Sarkar, he would say that in India there was no feudalism. Still, in his writings, he would use almost unthinkingly, as a matter of course, terms such as feudatories, fiefs, vassals. In ancient India, there were fiefs, there were vassals, there were feudatories, but no, you can't call it feudal. So that Chattopadhyaya, of course, was very well aware of. And he refers in this article to an early piece by Burton-Stein, where Burton-Stein comes down very hard on the use of such terms. He says that in India there didn't exist any fief, there was no vassalage, and of course there was no feudalism. So, but there is no writing of early medieval Indian history. There are so many lesser kings, rulers, that they are routinely described as feudatories. So in this article too, he is using the term feudatories routinely, but he notes in one footnote that I'm using it because I don't have a better word for it. I mean it only to indicate a subordinate political status. So by implication, he distances himself from the feudalism thesis, but yet this article remains very well within this new historiography. This happens also to be his, I think, only piece on which there has hardly been any subsequent discussion. To be sure, this article is read by all of us. It has been consulted, it's fully relied upon. Whoever writes of the Rajputs of early medieval India, the discussion of the origin of Rajputs, their political, economic, social system, say in Professor Ranbir Chakravarti's book, in Upinder Singh's book, they all are completely based on Chattopadhyaya's article. But there is no further discussion. Chattopadhyaya himself, he says in this article in the beginning that I write this article only as an, I quote, that only as an outline of an intended fuller study. So he thought he was doing only an outline. only a sketch of the issue. It merited a fuller treatment. So he said that I intend to do a fuller study later on. It's only the first outline. So unfortunately, he was not subsequently able to return. And as I say that this question has not been taken up for further research and reflection in our historiography. So I intend to make the first beginning here. So Professor Chattopadhyaya stood tall among the historians of early India. The relative greatness of his works has undoubtedly been underlined by the current lecture series. So hard as I will try, so as I speak, I will only contribute to the further lengthening of the stature of Professor Chattopadhyaya, as all my previous speakers have done. What would he have done? Had he returned and undertaken a fuller study of the question of the origin of Rajputs, what things probably he would have done? And this is, I think, mostly one would be concerned with examining the incidents, the true significance of the term Rajputra or its allied terms like Maharajputra, Maharanak, Ranak, Mandalik, Mandalik, Rawat, Rajkul. There is a plethora of terms. So they occur very widely in inscriptions across at least North India. I'm not very aware of the data from South India. And in all our sources, literary sources, in the Gujarat Chronicles, in the Ras Tarangani of Kalhan, where it has been briefly noticed, but most analysis of Ras Tarangani, they have been translation-based studies. So, which can be very tricky on issues like this. Because say the same word Samant, you will find in translation, sometimes it is translated as a noble, sometimes as a military officer, sometimes as a subordinate, very differently. But so this is what my guess is, that it would be, and this is the topic of my today's lecture, the Rajputras of early India. This question, you see the term Rajputra, Raut, these terms occur so very frequently in so many inscriptions that could not possibly have been neglected by the translators, by the historians commenting on those inscriptions. So there was this view that the word Rajputra, it generally meant a mounted warrior, a trooper. It designated a military status. In some other inscriptions, for instance, in Pala inscriptions, in Gahadwal inscriptions, in other records too, the term Rajputra also occurs, say, in the inscriptions of Shalod Bhavas. There it occurs some kind of political, administrative, some kind of state functionary, not necessarily a military warrior. So there are two senses in which the term is understood, either as a mounted warrior. It's a very, very common meaning of the term, which we historians of early India, we no longer notice. But look at the writings of Irfan Habib. Till date, he works only on this meaning, that the Rajputra of early medieval India was a trooper, a warrior on horseback. And it has been widely used in this sense by historians of previous generations of ancient India and by other people too. For instance, in the historical dictionary of medieval India by Iqtadar Alam Khan, it is this meaning only that he will recognize. Rajput means a trooper. Muhammad Habib, when he wrote his introduction to Khalik Nizami's work, so he said that the word Rajput in this sense is not known before the Mughal period, which is of course not true. But this is the almost general consensus that the people who are known today as Rajputs, they were not called Rajputs before 13th century, before 12th century. In other senses, as I said, our land grant inscriptions, when they speak of, when they describe a land grant, where the state officials are addressed, so a long list of state functionaries are specified. One of them is Rajputra, or sometimes Maharajputra. So at the time Chattopadhyaya he sat down to write this article. So he confronted this meaning, which he unequivocally rejected. उन्होंने खारिज कर दिया. He said that this word cannot mean just a political status. He did not even refer to the military sense of the term, not even once. He said that this term is taken, but he rejected the view. He said that it's a common view that it does not, it is that the word Rajputra in early India is not a signifier of any descent group, of any social group, of any social status. And he gave us a number of references which he thought showed that Rajputra before 13th century, during early medieval India itself, it had come to denote a specific descent groups, social groups, lineages. So I quote him again. So he wrote, the existence of the Rajputs in the 10th, 12th centuries has often been doubted. And but he asserts that the doubt is unfounded, since by the 12th century, the term Rajputra had come to acquire the later connotation of the term Rajput. And he cited many pieces of evidence. For instance, he cited the Prabandh Chintamani of the Jain Acharya Merutung, which speaks about 100 Rajputs of Parmar clan. So evidence such as this, or Rajputs in 3 generations. So it says that this evidence means that Rajput was already a signifier of social status. So I think a further examination would have led him to revise his view from this point onwards. The evidence which he marshals is important, yet not sufficient for establishing his argument that Rajput, the word Rajput, denoted distinct social groups, which means there is a need to return to the older twin meanings of the term, which were being routinely employed by almost all historians and epigraphists. The first meaning of mounted warrior, a trooper, the second meaning of a state functionary of slightly varying status from state to state. In the hierarchy of state functionaries, which are listed in inscriptions of various dynasties, the Rajputras or Maharajputras, they do not occupy the same place always. In some place, they are slightly above someone, in others, they are below. So how do we begin? When we return to this issue of the Rajput, as I said that so far the evidence which I have been able to see, it points only in these directions, not necessarily a trooper. This meaning is widely used, but if you actually look at the inscription, you will find that one epigraphist, one historian is referring to the previous one to yet previous one. So where does it all lead up to? Where is the actual evidence that the Rajputra being mentioned in the inscription was a horse riding warrior? It turns out that most epigraphists and historians, in so assuming, they have worked without any direct evidence. And they all rely on the insight which was first offered by that great editor of the third volume of Corpus Inscriptionum Indicarum, James Faithful Fleet. We are so indebted to that great man in so many ways for so much of our analysis. This is also one of them. In analyzing the epigraphic terminology, Fleet was always careful to make a distinction between what he would say is the literal meaning of the term and what is the technical meaning of the term. Basically, some special meaning of the term and the usual meaning of the term. For instance, about Rajputra, he would say that Rajputra generally will mean, it does mean in many records, what it means commonly, a prince, a royal scion. But he also notes that there are many records where it cannot have that meaning, where it has got, in his words, a technical sense. So what can it mean technically? The inscriptions themselves offer no further clue. They indicate that the term cannot be taken in its usual sense of a prince, of a royal scion, but they provide no further help as to what it then actually means. So he turns to then other languages, to Marathi and to Gujarati dictionaries of 19th century. There you have the word Raut in Marathi, like our Sanjay Raut, or Rawat of Gujarat. And in both the languages, the terms Raut and Rawat, they mean a horse riding warrior, a trooper. This is the basis on which this whole tradition of regarding the Rajputras of early medieval inscriptions as warriors, horse riding warriors, is based. Before that, the dictionary makers, the linguists, they would think that Raut or Rajput, it was a Prakrit version of Sanskrit, Ravdut, the messenger of the king. But the term is more directly, is better derived from Rajputra. So it's on this ground that this meaning was given. Is there no way? And as I said, Irfan Habib and medievalists especially, they could get the meaning of the warrior meaning very clearly because of the indisputable evidence of Chachnam. In Chachnam, when the army of Dahir facing Qasim is being described. So the Persian translator, he says that on one side, there were 5,000 sons of kings. Now, I mean, who is this fertile? So obviously, it was concluded that this is a literal rendering of Rajputra. And if there are 5,000 Rajputras, they have got to be warriors, and they occur there as warriors. But do we have evidence of this before that? What about the other literary sources of early medieval India? I do not have the time to discuss the evidence in detail, but because there is one more question to be discussed, the question of hereditary land control of Rajputra as a member of the landed aristocracy of early medieval India. There are two issues. One is the status of Rajput, who is the Rajputra. The second, his place in the political and economic hierarchy. So I have examined some sources in detail, Chattopadhyaya, and especially Ras Tarangani, Harsh-Charit, and more. So the association of Rajputras with horse riding is explicit in this text, in Kalhan's work. But it's not easy to use Kalhan's work. Compulsions of Kalhan as a poet, where at one place say he cannot write Rajputra. वो मीटर में फिट नहीं आएगा, छंद नहीं बैठेगा. So what he's calling them? He's calling them Atmaj of Raja, Rajatmaj. Rajputra को कह रहे हैं Rajatmaj. Sometimes evidence from very far away places, they very strikingly support each other. Rajputras occur as horse riding warriors in the Ras Tarangani, but they are not only the mounted warriors. They are one group of people. We know from one place in Ras Tarangani that Rajputras were people from the plain. We also know that these Rajputras, most of these Rajputras, they came from distinguished families. They are already having pride in their 36 clans. But we are also having Rajputras who are domes, who are generally listed with Chandals. Just as in the plains, we have Brahmins who are Rajputras. So the term does not denote any social status particularly. And there are other warriors who are also troopers, horse riding warriors, like Tantrins in the Ras Tarangani. So two social groups of warriors. Just as we have in Odisha. In Odisha, we have Khandayats, they are higher in caste. And below them, we have Rauts. Both belong to military profession. Vasudev Sharan Agrawal, in that brilliant work of his, Harsh-Charit Ek Sanskritik Adhyan, available later, it was translated and redacted by his son, Prithvi Agarwal. It's available in English too. He was the first person to notice that the word Rajputra does not occur in the sense of a royal prince. For that, we have another word, Kulputras. Rajputri. I return to the text. So, not all that Vasudev Sharanji says can be accepted, but Rajputra occurs as a warrior who is very close from distinguished families, It does not denote any royal prince as such. Rajputri does. Twice the word Rajputri occurs in the text, once at the beginning, other at the end. It means royal princess, not the word Rajput. And there is one the evidence is almost direct. This is in Malvika Agnimitram of Kalidas. So where this Ashwamedh, this sacrificial horse is wandering, and it fights the Greeks on the right bank of the Indus. There is a cavalry force, and they are defeated by the 100 Rajputras surrounding the sacrificial horse. I think this is not the earliest still, but this is one of the very early references to Rajputra in the professional sense. So I think I won't spend much more time on discussing the incidents, the nuances. As I said, so many things have to be kept in mind when we analyze a text like Kalhans Rastarangani. There are intricate issues of method which have to be followed if we wish to interpret this text correctly. So we have this. So I'm reopening the question, which was closed by Professor Chattopadhyaya in 1976. I'm very sure that he would have done it himself had he returned to this question himself. The second is, as I said, about the Rajputra as a member of landed aristocracy. Here, historiographically, we have to go much further back, at least to the writings of U.N. Ghoshal, in fact, even before them. But U.N. Ghoshal popularized the term clan monarchy to describe these states of Rajputs of early medieval India. That the political system was based on some kind of lineage principle, where there were Chaurasi villages and there was this duodecimal system of land distribution. The same thesis it is still advocated by Irfan Habib, especially after consulting the Lekh Paddhati. But he doesn't believe in any hierarchy of feudal lords. He says that there was a confederacy of chiefs of all kinds. Some were Ranak, some were Raval, and they all had hereditary warriors, these mounted warriors, Rajputras under them. They had established hereditary land control. Parallel to this is the thesis of Chattopadhyaya himself in this article, where he shows that how a new land system was emerging, especially in the Chahman kingdom of Naddul, where land assignments to Rajputras were being made. They were being placed in hereditary control of these pieces of land. Sometimes people from other lineages would be accommodated so that there would be, in the word of one historian, one small principality of one lineage of Rajputs within the larger kingdom of another lineage of Rajputs. So there was this linkage of the emerging class of warriors with territorial distribution of landed property, at least of the state claims from the landed property. I'm very happy to say that it was left for me to discover so that This evidence was busted by Chattopadhyaya himself unknowingly in that small book of his, Rural Settlements. In the chapter on Chahamanas of Naddul, he notices one thing. He says that land is often changing hands. He's just saying that if you take up a piece of land, one village, and see its history across generations, across years, you find that the same land was being held, it was being assigned to different people, unconnected, different people at different points of time. So land was changing hands according to him. He could also surmise, what was the explanation? He said that there was some kind of pressure. So what I did in that pre-PhD article of mine was to link it with the description of clan monarchies of the hereditary distribution of land, on which duodecimal hereditary system of land distribution, on which this Rajput system was allegedly based, and said that it was actually no hereditary control. There was a system of regular transfer of landed assignments. It was some kind of transferable Zagir system. So this is not, this by itself, this discovery, it's an important dent in the thesis of clan monarchy, but it may only modify it. There are many other constituent elements of this thesis of clan monarchy. Actually, it goes back at least to the time of B.H. Baden-Powell, Land System of British India, that 3-volume work. He came up with this hypothesis, of which UN Ghoshal discovered epigraphical confirmation, and then subsequently it has been resurrected, developed further. Now, whoever reads Irfan Habib's Medieval India, a study of civilization from National Book Trust, will find a full-bodied description of this system, of this Rajput system, which is very different from we teach about the lineage polities of early medieval India in our books. I'll be very happy and grateful to have any questions from any one of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your enlightening lecture. And although took around 45 minutes, as you said earlier, that you will take around, but I think no one has realized that we passed 45 minutes. The pin drop silence itself speaks in the audience that you all have enjoyed this and you have heard it carefully and you have taken note. As Professor Jha has said that he'll be happy to know if there are any questions or if there is any question. From the student side, I think you all are aware of this topic, and we have this topic is part of our syllabus also, origin of Rajput. So if there is any question or any clarification need. Okay. Actually, sir, we don't encourage many questions in this memorial lecture series, but still sometimes, if it depends on the speaker, if they want, we can. So, if you have any doubt, you can come forward. Otherwise, we'll formally thank you. And sir, one more thing, we'll seek your permission for recording and uploading this talk on the YouTube. which we have already recorded. We will take your permission for uploading it on the website or YouTube, sir. So now may I request my colleague Dr. Sukain to come and deliver his formal vote of thanks. Yes, I requested earlier Professor A.I.H.C. who said, which he categorically denied, and he always,
I can just say.
please. It will be a great honor for all of us.
After that, he will formally give the.
Okay, as you, we all obey your directions.
No, it's not a question of obeying. Actually, yesterday I got a call from our friend, Professor Visva-Bharati, and I was surprised that after a long time he rang up to me. So we talked, and I knew earlier because Neil had sent me the link also that he is going to give a lecture, memorial lecture in honor of the memory of Professor P.D. Chattopadhyaya. Actually, Professor Visva-Bharati is very well known in the field of ancient Indian history for many of his writings, not only the research articles, reviews, and books also. And after a long time, I got an opportunity to listen to him. And his lecture on the origin of Rajput is really very enlightening and very interesting, particularly a person of like me who knows nothing about the origin of Rajput. Though I have studied something in the medieval sources, like A.I.H.C, Abul Fazl also has mentioned, and some other like Tarikh Firoz Shahi. Like regarding the reference of landed aristocracy, they have referred two terms, Rao and Ranas. Rao and Ranas who were holding the land and who were holding the, various, that is known as Ipta, or the, which later on came to known as Zamindari or Jagirdari. So these we come to know. But there are certain groups where we know about the origin of Rajput, but not from the Marxist point of view. That's why knowing about the origin of the Rajput from the Marxist point, it is very interesting and very informative for us. And I also thank Professor Visva-Bharati. Do you listen to me? Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Respected guests, friends, and students, on the behalf of Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture, and Archaeology, it's my privilege to propose vote of thanks for Professor P.D. Chattopadhyaya Memorial Lecture Series. I would like to take the opportunity to thank our distinguished speaker, Professor Visva-Bharati, for not only sparing this valuable time for us, but also for enlightening us with a great talk. You highlighted the important works of Professor P.D. Chattopadhyaya, also reviewed significant works of scholars who worked on origin of Rajput history. You touched upon the important aspects such as the etymology of the word Rajputra, and also took us to the journey of their early references, and also the Rajputra's association to the landed aristocracy. Thank you so much for the wonderful talk. I guess the students have also thoroughly enjoyed it. Special thanks to A.I.H.C, sir, and other distinguished guests who have joined us online, Professor Claudine, Dr. K.K. Mandal. We thank everyone, and we would like everyone to participate in the future events as well. Thank you so much. Hope to see you again in future, sir. Thank you so much.